Hello folks, another rant today. This one's been bouncing around in my head for a few days now, and though I like to avoid deliberate controversy, it seems my brain is hardwired to want to talk about this kind of stuff. The title here is, as always, the best I could come up with to succinctly convey my idea, but nonetheless imperfect. So what the fuck am I talking about? I think that reviews are meant to analyze a piece of art's merit, its objective value. But, and this is a complaint, I don't think game reviews are necessarily doing that. The gaming culture has exploded over the last few decades. It's a very emergent medium, and we're still struggling to find equilibrium and normality relative to other artistic mediums like film culture. I think perhaps more so than any other artistic culture, there is a culture war going on in the gaming sphere. Games are being politicized, and not just in the obvious ways you might think I'm talking about. The very genres we choose to play, how those genres are defined, that is political in the sense that we all have a personal agenda of what we would like to see represented and furthered in the gaming sphere. Take difficulty, which I've talked about obviously in the past. When you talk about difficulty in games now, you're talking about so much more than just difficulty. And people will hate you for your opinions. Why? Because it's a war, an ongoing war between two sides. It's not about reason or what's right necessarily, it's about who's right. It's about picking a tribe and putting all your bets on that one side. God forbid you take the side of objective truth, of merit, or game design. But hell, even when I try to narrow down this topic to one of pure, unsullied game design, well, that's political too, isn't it? Because we can't agree on what proper, correct game design is. And I'll agree that that in of itself is proper and correct. We should always be pushing design forward and debating on what's best. But the problem I talk about stands, and it's most obvious when you look at particular franchises and their devout followers. Shin Megami Tensei is a fascinating one. Shin Megami Tensei is a series that attracts a lot of hardcore gamers, but its spin-off sister Persona has been wildly successful in the mainstream, or, more mainstream part of gaming. And while there's a lot of overlap between the fans of both, there's also a divide, and those who dare to compare the two games can find themselves the victims of review bombing. When a hot button topic becomes particularly hard fought over, as in the case of Gamergate, resentment builds on both sides until good faith conversation is all but annihilated. All that is left are two bitter factions holding grudges from years back, sharpening their blades for the next big war and asking newcomers, "Where do you stand?" It's been similar with some of the takes on Metroid Dread. You may have seen my last Metroid Dread video talking about David Jaffe and his take, and it's no surprise to see that Metroid fans have been rabid in their defense of their game, and I say their game very deliberately. This game aims very specifically to please hardcore fans and absolutely rejects what the fans didn't like about Other M, the narrative and characterization elements. This franchise hasn't seen a new game in a decade, and so there is a vested interest for those review scores to be high. This feeds into the hype machine, with some gamers even foregoing their usual philosophy of no pre-orders for games they want to support. Support the devs, if the game sells enough copies, it'll get a sequel. Elden Ring has been most enlightening in this respect. The game's not even out yet, but there's a lot of vitriol being thrown at reviewers who dare to criticize certain aspects of the game. That's because the fans have gone beyond game enjoyers or appreciators. They have become fans. It's like they've made a personal investment in the franchise. It's like they now identify as a Dark Souls fan. It's part of their identity. I can't help but draw parallels between this and sports teams, which obviously, you're not part of the sports team. You don't, whether they're good or bad has nothing to do with your own skill, but there is this feeling of belonging, this feeling of if they do well, I do well. It's less about anything objective and more about belonging to a side, a team, a community that instills them with something that feels like purpose in a world otherwise bereft of meaning. They want Elden Ring to be a good game, sure, but they want it so hard they're willing to ignore objectivity. I've seen recently points being made about the open world of Elden Ring being somewhat devoid of things to do besides combat, And this is something I brought up towards the end of my Elden Ring trailer analysis. I wondered out loud how much there would be to do in the open world. And this isn't a prejudgment on the quality of that. Shadow of the Colossus wasn't filled with shrines or flashing icons, and I enjoyed that open world. But merely making that neutral statement that the world is a bit empty can be enough to incense the hardest core of fans. It's like they're watching for any perceived criticism of the game, and somehow by extension of themselves, since they have invested themselves in this team, this franchise, and they are ready to leap to the game's defense. A game that most of them have not even personally played, but they have a personal stake in the game being perfect. Are they FromSoft shareholders? Probably not. It's curious. It further complicates the matter that Souls games are the charismatic general for the army of difficulty and that entire warband of grouped ideologies and philosophies on gaming. If you zoom out to look at the entire gaming sphere, you'll see many such bands overlapping and shifting, that war over many hot-button topics. From difficulty and casualization of games to representation, violence, and sexualization of characters, the importance of graphics, DRM inclusion, monetization practices. There are lots of sides, and we can zoom all the way down if we want to see the nitty-grittiest of issues we fight over, those hills we're personally unwilling to die on. It begs the question if these products, these IPs, haven't replaced the function of religion in society. We're becoming more and more secular, and many folks seem adrift, searching for some well-defined identity to feel a sense of place and belonging. It does seem like a lot of people search for and find that in products. Media. Who's your favorite Spider-Man? Are you a Krillin or a Piccolo fan? Xbox or PlayStation? Who's the best waifu in Persona? I guess the question for me is this a good thing? If it wasn't, could we even help it? Humans seem hardwired to understand the world socially. As someone with Asperger's, who's somewhat socially blind, it's a phenomenon I find both fascinating and alien. I've come to realize that this is just the way humans work, as bizarre as it is, and we have to learn to work within it. That said, even I'm not entirely immune to this phenomenon. In reviewing Metroid Dread, I wanted to put my biases up front, right at the beginning of the video. And yet, despite saying that I would be aware of my own bias, I found myself combing through my own statements of late. Towards the end of the review, I expressed that I don't like game scores out of 10 or whatever. I don't find them useful for telling people whether or not they'd enjoy a game. But I'll be honest, part of this is also because I want to avoid the inherent battling over review scores and worthiness. This game is worth X points, it beats this other game. And yet, despite my feelings, I felt compelled to give a number anyway. Not just any number, but a 10 out of 10. Now, that's me rounding up to the most fitting whole number, and in that respect, I stand by it. But if I have to be completely truthful, I feel like a 9.5 or thereabouts is probably more fitting for the game. It's not a perfect game, and I don't want to give people the impression to the contrary. I said as much in the review. So why in that moment of scripting did I decide to simply round it up to 10 out of 10? I guess I'm not immune to the herd tendency after all. I think for me, it's less about identifying with a group or franchise, but the secondary effect of that herd existing. I don't want to piss it off. When you're writing a review for a game belonging to a beloved franchise, it's like writing a school report for a child from a very important and rich family. You want to stay on the good side of that family, especially if it's a local family you do a lot of business with, or a family or a fandom you technically belong to. And so it's all tribes, and even I can't escape from it, though I do strive to. In recent days, I find my mind wandering to those Shin Megami Tensei 5 reviews and David Jaffe, or any games journalist who has the bravery to criticize what's hot, whether I disagree or agree with their takes. In this age of doxing, of social credit in the form of likes and followers, and of our entire lives being on public display, the consequences can be harsh for those who go against the crowd to speak their honest minds. And yet we must do just that, or our reviews have no truth and no value. So all this brings me to my final point. Subscribe, because it has nothing to do with whether or not you'll actually watch my future videos. It's just a vote for whether or not you like my opinion. Join the fucking tribe, you sheep fuck.